Las Vegas, 2012. In the vibrant city known for its casinos and nightlife, a quieter, more conventional life unfolded in the affluent neighborhood of Summerlin. Here, Emily and Mark Williams had crafted a seemingly perfect existence, embodying the American dream. Yet beneath the polished surface of their lives lay complexities that would soon unravel. Emily was 36, a striking woman with a radiant smile and an air of confidence that could light up any room. Born in a small Midwestern town, she moved to Las Vegas at 18 to pursue a degree in business administration. Ambitious and driven, Emily thrived in the city's fast-paced environment. She quickly climbed the corporate ladder, becoming a successful marketing executive for a luxury hotel chain. While she enjoyed her career's perks, fancy dinners, upscale events, and lavish gifts, she often felt something was missing. Her life, despite its outward success, felt empty and unfulfilled. Mark, 42, was a charismatic lawyer with a natural talent for persuasion and a sharp intellect. A Las Vegas native, he had always been drawn to the city's energy. Specializing in corporate law, Mark represented high-profile clients in the entertainment industry. He was respected and well-known, with a reputation for his courtroom prowess and dedication to his work. Mark's life was a blend of high-stakes negotiations and glamorous social events. Yet, despite his professional success, he harbored a deep love for Emily, a love that had blossomed in an unexpected place. 8 years earlier, at a charity gala hosted by the hotel where Emily worked, their paths had crossed. Mark, attending as a guest, was instantly captivated by Emily's charm and intelligence. They spent the evening engrossed in conversation, discovering shared interests and a mutual love for adventure. Their connection was undeniable, and it wasn't long before they started dating. 2 years later, they married in an extravagant ceremony that showcased the glamour of Las Vegas. The couple quickly became a prominent fixture in the city's social scene, known for their charisma and style. In the early years of their marriage, Emily and Mark were inseparable. They traveled extensively, exploring exotic destinations and indulging in luxurious experiences. Emily's job provided them with exclusive access to the city's most elite venues, and Mark enjoyed the perks that came with her position. They bought a beautiful home in Summerlin, complete with a pool and a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Their life was a whirlwind of excitement and luxury, filled with spontaneous getaways and lavish parties. However, as time passed, the demands of their careers began to strain their relationship. Mark's work required long hours and frequent business trips, leaving Emily alone for extended periods. While Mark thrived in the fast-paced world of corporate law, Emily found herself increasingly isolated. The excitement that once defined their relationship gradually faded, replaced by a growing sense of distance. Conversations became perfunctory, focusing on daily logistics rather than their dreams and desires. The spark that had brought them together seemed to have dimmed. In an attempt to rekindle the passion in their marriage, Mark surprised Emily with a year-long membership to an exclusive gym in Las Vegas. It was a thoughtful gesture, a nod to Emily's recent interest in fitness and well-being. The gym, renowned for its elite clientele and top-tier trainers, was an impressive gift. Mark hoped it would provide Emily with a new outlet and perhaps bring them closer together. He had no idea it would lead her down a path that would change their lives forever. At the gym, Emily met Jason Mitchell, her assigned personal trainer. Jason was in his early 30s, tall and athletic, with an easy smile and a charismatic presence. His dark hair and chiseled features made him stand out, but it was his charm and attentiveness that drew people in. Jason had been a trainer for nearly a decade and had a reputation for being flirtatious with his clients. He knew how to make them feel special, a skill that had earned him a loyal following. From their first session, Jason's energy was contagious. He had a way of making workouts seem less like a chore and more like a fun challenge. Emily, initially hesitant and self-conscious, quickly warmed to his enthusiastic approach. Jason's encouragement and praise boosted her confidence, making her feel seen and valued. He complimented her progress, celebrated her achievements, and pushed her to set higher goals. Emily found herself looking forward to their sessions, eager for the physical challenge and the attention she received. As the weeks passed, the dynamic between Emily and Jason began to shift. Their conversations, initially focused on fitness, grew increasingly personal. They started chatting about their lives outside the gym, Jason's experiences as a trainer, Emily's career in marketing, and even their childhood memories. Jason shared stories from his past, painting a picture of a man who had always been driven and ambitious. He spoke of his passion for fitness, his love for the Las Vegas nightlife, and his dreams of opening his own gym one day. Emily, in turn, found herself opening up to Jason in ways she hadn't expected. She talked about her marriage to Mark, the pressures of her job, and the sense of emptiness she sometimes felt. Jason listened with genuine interest, offering supportive words and occasional flirtatious remarks. He was attentive and understanding, qualities that Emily craved but felt were lacking in her marriage. The boundaries between trainer and client blurred as their conversations grew deeper and more intimate. There was an undeniable chemistry between them, a spark that was impossible to ignore. Jason's playful teasing and lingering glances fueled a growing attraction. He began to compliment Emily on more than just her workouts, noticing her outfits, her hair, even the way she carried herself. His flirtations were subtle but persistent, making Emily feel desired and attractive. She reveled in the attention, basking in the thrill of their covert flirtation. Emily tried to dismiss her feelings as harmless fun, a little flirtation that made her feel alive. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. The connection she felt with Jason was different from anything she had experienced in a long time. It was exciting and dangerous, a secret indulgence that added a spark to her otherwise monotonous life. She found herself thinking about him outside of their sessions, replaying their conversations and imagining what might happen if they crossed the line. Jason, for his part, seemed equally drawn to Emily. He often extended their sessions, spending extra time chatting with her after workouts. They began texting outside of gym hours, their messages gradually shifting from casual to personal. Jason complimented her on her beauty and intelligence, making it clear that he was interested in more than just a professional relationship. Emily responded in kind, unable to resist the magnetic pull between them. As their interactions grew more intimate, the line between professional and personal continued to blur. Jason's charm and flirtatious nature captivated Emily, drawing her deeper into a web of attraction and desire. The gym became more than just a place to work out. It was a sanctuary where she could escape her everyday life and indulge in her fantasies. Emily knew she was playing with fire, but the thrill of the forbidden was too enticing to resist. The relationship between Emily and Jason was intensifying, and the consequences of their growing bond were becoming increasingly unavoidable. Unbeknownst to them, the seeds of a tragic and life-altering chain of events were being sown, setting the stage for a confrontation that would change everything. The moment Emily and Jason crossed the line from a professional relationship to something far more personal, everything changed. It happened one evening after a particularly grueling workout. The gym was emptying out, and Emily lingered, enjoying the post-workout high and the easy conversation with Jason. As they chatted in the quiet, dimly lit gym, the tension between them became palpable. Jason's gaze lingered on Emily, and she felt her pulse quicken under his intense scrutiny. In a moment of shared silence, Jason moved closer, his eyes locked onto hers. Emily felt a rush of adrenaline and excitement, a mixture of fear and desire. Before she could overthink, Jason closed the distance and kissed her. It was a kiss that felt inevitable, an act that both had fantasized about but never dared to pursue. The kiss was electric, filled with the pent-up longing and passion they had been suppressing. As they pulled away, breathless and flushed, both knew they had irrevocably crossed a line. After the kiss, Emily and Jason's attraction could no longer be contained. They quickly found themselves in the men's shower room, where Jason locked the door behind them. In the secluded space, they hurriedly stripped off their clothes. The cold tile contrasted with the heat of their bodies as they came together. Jason pressed Emily against the wall, their breathing quick and urgent. The thrill of being somewhere so forbidden intensified their actions, and they had sex with a mix of passion and desperation, lost in the moment. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Emily. She felt a mix of exhilaration and guilt, torn between her desire for Jason and her loyalty to Mark. The intimate connection opened up something in her, a deep-seated craving for excitement and attention that her marriage had long ceased to provide. Emily found herself constantly thinking about Jason. She mentally replayed their passionate evening and looked forward to their next meeting. Despite her guilt, Emily couldn't stay away from Jason. Their training sessions became a cover for their growing affair. They met secretly in Jason's apartment, where their stolen moments were filled with intense passion. The thrill of the forbidden made each encounter more intoxicating than the last. Emily felt alive in Jason's arms, her senses heightened and her emotions raw. The affair provided an escape from her mundane life, a secret world where she could be free from the constraints of her marriage. However, the affair was not without its complications. Emily struggled with the guilt of betraying Mark, a man who had always been kind and supportive. She knew she was being selfish, putting her desires above her marriage, but the pull towards Jason was too strong. The secrecy and danger of their relationship added to the allure, making it impossible for her to resist. Emily tried to compartmentalize her life, keeping her affair separate from her marriage, but the lines quickly blurred. Jason, too, became increasingly obsessed with Emily. What started as a casual fling turned into a consuming passion. He found himself wanting more than just their stolen moments. He wanted Emily to be his completely. Jason's charismatic and confident exterior masked a possessive and obsessive nature. He began to push for more time together, hinting at the possibility of a future beyond their affair. Emily, caught in the throes of passion and the thrill of secrecy, was both excited and terrified by the prospect. The affair quickly became an addiction for both of them. They were drawn to each other like moths to a flame, unable to resist the magnetic pull. The excitement of their illicit relationship blinded them to the consequences of their actions. Emily began to lie more frequently to Mark, inventing excuses for her absences and late nights. She became adept at covering her tracks, erasing text messages and keeping her phone close at all times. The deception weighed heavily on her, but the thrill of the affair outweighed the guilt, at least for a while. As the affair deepened, Emily found herself increasingly distant from Mark. The emotional and physical disconnect between them grew, and she felt a sense of relief and freedom when she was with Jason. The more time she spent with Jason, the more her feelings for him intensified. Emily knew she was on a dangerous path, but she couldn't bring herself to end the affair. The passion and excitement Jason brought into her life were unlike anything she had ever experienced, and she was addicted to the high. The affair, however, was not sustainable. The lies and deceit began to take their toll on Emily, and the stakes grew higher with each passing day. The fear of being caught, the guilt of betraying Mark, and the uncertainty of her future with Jason weighed heavily on her. Emily was trapped in a web of her own making, and she knew it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. As the weeks passed, Emily's life began to spiral out of control. The initial thrill of the affair with Jason had turned into a dangerous addiction that she struggled to manage. Emily became increasingly reckless, neglecting her responsibilities and distancing herself from her husband, Mark. Her once structured life started to unravel at an alarming pace. Mark, a naturally observant person, couldn't help but notice the subtle yet significant changes in Emily's behavior. She was often absent, either physically or mentally, and seemed preoccupied and distant. Emily's phone was constantly buzzing with notifications, and she would quickly hide the screen whenever Mark was near. Her once predictable routine had become erratic, with sudden trips to the gym and late-night outings she could barely explain. Mark's suspicions grew with each passing day, fueled by the inconsistencies in her stories and the vague excuses she offered. Emily, feeling the pressure of leading a double life, struggled to maintain her composure. She concocted elaborate lies to cover up her affair, telling Mark that she was volunteering at a charity or meeting old friends. But her alibis were thin, and the guilt weighed heavily on her. The constant deception took a toll on her mental state, making her increasingly paranoid and anxious. She started to avoid intimate conversations with Mark, fearing that he would see through her facade. Meanwhile, Jason's possessiveness began to surface. What started as a casual fling had transformed into a consuming obsession. Jason wanted more than stolen moments in the gym's shower room. He wanted Emily to himself. He would text her incessantly, demanding her attention and questioning her whereabouts. Jason's neediness became suffocating, adding another layer of stress to Emily's already complicated life. He would press her for details about her relationship with Mark, seeking reassurance that she felt nothing for her husband. Emily, caught in a web of lies and deceit, found it increasingly challenging to placate Jason while maintaining the illusion of a happy marriage. As the affair continued, Emily's world became a chaotic mess of secrets and deceit. The excitement that once defined her relationship with Jason was overshadowed by the fear of discovery and the reality of her crumbling marriage. Emily's attempts to juggle her double life were failing, and the walls were closing in. The more she tried to hold on to both men, the more her life seemed to slip away from her. The turning point came on an otherwise ordinary evening when Mark stumbled upon irrefutable evidence of Emily's affair. He had been cleaning up the living room when he noticed Emily's phone buzzing on the coffee table. Out of sheer curiosity, he glanced at the screen and saw a string of messages from an unknown number. As he scrolled through the texts, his heart sank. The explicit content left no doubt about what had been happening behind his back. One message in particular, a suggestive photo accompanied by a promise to meet soon, shattered his already growing suspicions. Unable to contain his anger and hurt, Mark decided to confront Emily. He waited for her to return home, replaying the damning messages in his mind and feeling the sting of betrayal. When Emily finally walked through the door, she was met with a cold, steely gaze that sent a chill down her spine. Mark didn't waste any time. He held up the phone, the incriminating messages glaringly obvious on the screen. The air grew tense as Emily's face turned pale, her eyes wide with fear and guilt. The confrontation quickly escalated into a heated argument. Mark, his voice trembling with rage, demanded an explanation. Emily, cornered and ashamed, struggled to find the right words. The facade of a happy marriage crumbled as harsh truths came to light. Mark's pain was palpable. He couldn't understand how the woman he loved could betray him so deeply. Emily tried to justify her actions, stammering out excuses about feeling neglected and unfulfilled, but her words only fueled Mark's anger, and the argument intensified. Amid the shouting and tears, Emily made a desperate promise to end the affair. She insisted that it was a mistake, a lapse in judgment that she regretted deeply. Mark, though devastated, wanted to believe her. He demanded that she cut off all contact with Jason immediately. Emily, sensing the gravity of the situation and the risk of losing her marriage, agreed. She knew she had to break things off with Jason, but the thought filled her with dread. When Emily called Jason the next day, her voice was shaky. She explained that their relationship had to end, that she needed to repair the damage she'd done to her marriage. Jason, however, refused to accept her decision. He became increasingly agitated, his tone growing darker with each word. He accused Emily of using him and threatened to expose their affair if she tried to leave him. The conversation quickly turned into a desperate plea, with Emily begging him to understand and let her go. But Jason's possessiveness had only grown, and he wasn't ready to relinquish the hold he had over her. As the call ended, Emily felt a cold sense of foreboding. She realized that breaking free from Jason would not be as simple as she had hoped. Mark, meanwhile, remained unaware of the full extent of Jason's obsession, clinging to the hope that Emily's promise to end the affair would be enough to save their marriage. The confrontation had laid bare the fractures in their relationship, and the road ahead was uncertain and fraught with danger. Jason's obsession with Emily spiraled into a dangerous and uncontrollable frenzy. After Emily's attempt to end their affair, he refused to accept her decision. His calls and texts became relentless, oscillating between desperate pleas and menacing threats. He accused her of abandoning him after everything they'd shared, his tone growing darker with each message. The charming, flirtatious man she had known seemed to vanish, replaced by someone far more unstable and dangerous. Jason began to escalate his attempts to maintain control. He started showing up unannounced at the places Emily frequented, including her gym and even the grocery store. Emily felt his presence everywhere, a shadow that haunted her every step. She tried to ignore him, to pretend that he wasn't watching her, but it became increasingly difficult. Jason's once charming demeanor had turned cold and obsessive, his eyes burning with a possessiveness that sent chills down her spine. Fear began to consume Emily. She tried to distance herself from Jason, blocking his number and avoiding the places he might appear. But he found ways to reach her, slipping notes under her car windshield and sending flowers to her home with cryptic, unsettling messages. Each gesture was a reminder that he was still there, lurking in the background of her life. Emily's anxiety grew with each passing day, her sense of security eroding under the weight of Jason's obsession. Mark noticed the changes in Emily's behavior. She was jumpy, her eyes constantly darting around as if expecting something terrible to happen. When he pressed her about what was wrong, she avoided his gaze and offered vague reassurances. But Mark knew something was amiss. He had seen the haunted look in her eyes, the way she flinched at sudden noises, and the cold sweat that would sometimes break out across her skin. His concern for her safety grew, and he struggled with how best to protect her. In the privacy of their home, Emily confided in Mark about Jason's escalating behavior. She told him about the calls, the texts, and the unexpected appearances. Mark's worry turned to anger, a protective instinct flaring up inside him. He couldn't stand the thought of someone threatening his wife, and he urged her to go to the police. Emily hesitated, fearing that involving law enforcement might provoke Jason further. She was caught in a web of fear and indecision, unable to see a clear path forward. As the days passed, Jason's behavior became more erratic. He began making veiled threats, hinting at self-harm or worse if Emily continued to ignore him. The emotional manipulation left her feeling trapped and guilty, torn between the desire to cut him off completely and the fear of what he might do. Emily's once stable life had unraveled into chaos, her every move shadowed by the specter of Jason's obsession. Mark remained vigilant, his concern for Emily's safety overshadowing everything else. He kept a close eye on her, worried that Jason might do something drastic. The tension in their household was palpable, a constant undercurrent of fear and uncertainty. The breaking point loomed on the horizon, an inevitable clash that threatened to shatter their lives completely. The air was thick with tension as the day of reckoning approached. Emily felt a sense of dread that she couldn't shake, as if some terrible event was about to unfold. Jason's messages had grown more frantic and threatening, each one a harbinger of the storm brewing. Despite her efforts to distance herself, he remained an ever-present shadow, his obsession reaching a fever pitch. Emily knew she had to be careful, but she had no idea just how dangerous things would become. On a fateful evening, Emily arrived home to find her worst fears realized. Jason was waiting for her, his eyes wild with a mix of anger and desperation. The man who had once been her charismatic trainer now stood before her as an unrecognizable figure, consumed by a twisted obsession. He demanded to know why she had cut him off, his voice a volatile mix of rage and pleading. Emily tried to stay calm, to reason with him, but the situation quickly spiraled out of control. As Jason's anger mounted, he grabbed Emily, shaking her violently. His grip was tight, his hands trembling with the intensity of his emotions. Emily struggled to free herself, her heart pounding in her chest. The room seemed to close in around them, the air thick with fear and the scent of desperation. Jason's words became more erratic, his tone shifting from accusatory to sorrowful, then back to menacing. He was unraveling before her eyes, and she knew she had to get away. In the chaos of the moment, Jason's aggression turned physical. Emily tried to push him away, her movements frantic as she fought for her freedom. But Jason's strength and desperation overwhelmed her. In the struggle, he shoved her with a force that sent her crashing into a glass table. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the room, mingling with Emily's cry of pain. The world seemed to slow down as she fell, her body hitting the ground with a sickening thud. For a moment, everything was silent. Jason stood frozen, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He stared at Emily's motionless body, the reality of what had just happened dawning on him. Panic set in as he realized the severity of his actions. He had crossed a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed. In his desperate attempt to hold on to Emily, he had hurt her in a way that could never be forgiven. Jason's mind raced as he contemplated his next move. The weight of his actions bore down on him, crushing any remnants of reason. Without another thought, he turned and fled, leaving the scene of his crime behind. His footsteps echoed through the empty halls as he ran, each step carrying him further away from the life he had destroyed. As the dust settled, the aftermath of the encounter became painfully clear. Emily lay on the floor, her body battered and broken. The room was a mess of shattered glass and overturned furniture, a silent witness to the violence that had taken place. Emily's fate hung in the balance, the result of a tragic encounter fueled by obsession and desperation. Mark arrived home that evening, his mind weary from a long day at work. He stepped into the quiet house, expecting to find Emily there, perhaps reading or preparing dinner. But as he walked through the hallway, an eerie stillness hung in the air. It was a silence that felt thick and heavy, pressing against him. His heart began to race as he called out for Emily, but there was no response. As he moved toward the living room, Mark's eyes fell upon a sight that would be etched into his memory forever. Emily lay on the floor, surrounded by shards of broken glass. Her body was still, unnaturally so, and her face was pale. The room was in disarray, with overturned furniture and a shattered table. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as Mark's mind struggled to process the scene before him. His breath caught in his throat, and a wave of horror and despair washed over him. Rushing to Emily's side, Mark knelt down and gently cradled her head. He could feel the coldness of her skin, the absence of life. Panic gripped him as he frantically checked for a pulse, but there was none. A guttural sob escaped his lips, the reality of the situation crashing down on him with brutal force. Mark clutched her lifeless body, tears streaming down his face. The love of his life was gone, and he was powerless to change it. As the initial shock subsided, a cold, piercing realization struck Mark. He knew who was responsible for this. Jason, the man who had intruded into their lives, who had stolen Emily's affection and led her down a path of destruction. Rage bubbled up inside him, mingling with his grief. He had known something was wrong, had sensed the changes in Emily, but he had never imagined it would end like this. With trembling hands, Mark pulled out his phone and dialed 911. His voice was shaky as he reported the incident, his words choked with emotion. He described the scene, the condition of Emily's body, and the chaos in the room. When asked if he knew who might have done this, Mark's answer was clear and resolute. Jason, the personal trainer who had become dangerously involved with his wife. The police arrived swiftly, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow through the windows. As the officers and paramedics entered the house, Mark stepped back, his mind numb with shock. He watched as they assessed the scene, carefully examining the evidence. The paramedics confirmed what he already knew. Emily was dead. Mark's knees buckled, and he collapsed into a chair, unable to tear his eyes away from the unfolding nightmare. In the hours that followed, Mark recounted the events of the past few weeks to the detectives. He spoke of Emily's increasing absences, her erratic behavior, and the undeniable signs of an affair. He told them about Jason, about the disturbing texts and gifts he had discovered. The detectives listened intently, taking notes and asking questions. They assured Mark that they would do everything in their power to bring Jason to justice. The news of Emily's death spread quickly, and soon the media descended upon the small, tight-knit community. The scandal was sensationalized in headlines and broadcasts, painting a sordid picture of a love triangle gone wrong. The public was shocked and horrified, grappling with the details of the tragic affair. Jason, who had once been a beloved figure at the local gym, was now the subject of intense scrutiny and disdain. Jason was swiftly apprehended, found hiding at a friend's house in a state of panic. He was arrested and charged with the murder of Emily. As the investigation continued, more details emerged about his obsession with her. Friends and acquaintances came forward with stories of Jason's possessive behavior and his unhealthy fixation on Emily. The picture that formed was one of a man driven to madness by unrequited love, willing to go to any lengths to possess the object of his obsession. Meanwhile, Mark was left to grapple with his grief and the shattered pieces of his life. The emotional toll was immense, and he struggled to come to terms with the loss of his wife. Their families, too, were devastated, caught in a whirlwind of sorrow and confusion. Mark often found himself replaying the past few months in his mind, searching for signs he might have missed, moments where he could have intervened and changed the course of events. But the reality was harsh and unchangeable. Emily was gone, and nothing could bring her back. In the midst of the chaos, Mark tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but the weight of his grief was overwhelming. The house felt empty without Emily's presence, a hollow shell of what it once was. Her absence was a constant reminder of the life they had lost, the future they would never have. Mark's nights were plagued with sleeplessness and nightmares, his days filled with a numb, hollow ache. As the trial approached, the community watched closely, eager for justice to be served. Jason's defense team argued that the incident had been a tragic accident, a result of a heated argument gone too far. But the prosecution painted a different picture, a tale of obsession, jealousy, and a fatal confrontation. The evidence was damning, and the jury found Jason guilty of second-degree murder, sentencing him to 25 years in prison. With the trial concluded and justice served, Mark was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. The pain of losing Emily was a wound that would never fully heal, but he knew he had to find a way to move forward. The ordeal had left him scarred, but it had also given him a new perspective on the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing the moments we have with those we love. In the end, the story of Emily and Jason was a tragic reminder of the dangers of obsession and the devastating consequences it can have. It was a tale of love and betrayal, of a life cut short by jealousy and rage. And as the community slowly returned to normalcy, the memory of Emily's vibrant spirit lived on, a beacon of light in the darkness of their shared sorrow. Reflecting on this tragic case, it's heartbreaking to see how a seemingly ordinary situation spiraled into such a devastating outcome. Emily and Mark's marriage, once filled with love and trust, was destroyed by infidelity and obsession. Jason, consumed by his feelings for Emily, made a series of choices that led to a fatal confrontation and his ultimate downfall. The tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked emotions and the irreversible consequences of our actions. The community will always remember this story as a cautionary tale of love gone horribly wrong,